So I'm back with a brand new DIY today. Now I love DIY, it's one of my favourite things, to be creative, do a bit of painting, bit of gluing, and that's why I love to share DIY videos with you guys. This video is actually going to be part of a new series here on my channel, which is going to be recreating some of my favourite pieces on the high street right now. They're all homeware pieces, they're from some stores that you will recognise, but I'm going to try and recreate them myself and see if I can do them for less money than it is to buy them. Obviously you guys have the option to buy it if you don't want to DIY it, and I'll link all of the original pieces obviously in the description box. So today's video is going to be recreating this beautiful frame from Anthropologie. I love Anthropologie and they've got so many amazing homeware pieces online right now, and one of the things I spotted when I was doing one of my browses online was this frame. It comes in a couple of different colours and I just love the design, and I thought I'm going to have a go at DIYing that and trying to recreate the sort of style of it. The Anthropologie frame has a mosaic design which uses bone within it. I'm actually not going to use bone, I'm only going to use the paint effect to sort of recreate the mosaic style and pattern of the Anthropologie frame. But it has a brilliant effect and I think the finished result is really nice. So here's how I did it. The most important thing is your frame. You need a nice, plain, unfinished wood frame for this DIY. I found mine in Dunelm for £2.99, so an absolute bargain, and it's the perfect rectangular shape with this lovely wood grain. It's got a tiny bit of a sheen on, which we're going to sand off, but yeah, it's a nice simple shape and perfect for this DIY. So you want to start by taking out the backing and the glass so that you're left with just the frame itself, and we're actually going to do a whitewash effect on the frame. That's the first thing we're going to do. So I've laid some paper down to protect my table, and I'm going to give the frame a light sand just to get rid of that ever so light varnish that it's got on, and that'll help the whitewash effect to soak into the wood grain. For the whitewash, I'm going to mix up my little tester pot of B&Q paint with some water in a little pot, and it's really not an exact science, just a bit of water, a bit of paint until you get the consistency that you want. You essentially want the water to soak into the frame and it leaves behind the whitewash effect from the paint. And then all we're going to do is paint this watery paint onto the frame. It's slightly trial and error as well, the whitewash effect. You have to kind of build it up to get the effect that you want. But I started by painting it on, and then I actually wiped off the excess with some kitchen roll. Then I applied a bit more, wiped off the excess again, and then left dry. To create a dappled effect with the paint, so I'm actually going to go in with a little paintbrush that's in the tester pot with some paint straight onto the frame with no water, and I'm going to use some kitchen roll just to dapple it, and I'm just going to create kind of like an uneven dappled paint effect. It really doesn't have to be that precise, it can be really random. You just want to create this kind of bit of texture using the white paint. And then once your frame's dried, we're going to use some masking tape to create the design. You can use any kind of masking tape you want. So I've started around the outside. I'm trying to create this very thin trim that goes around the whole design. So as you can see, I'm overlapping the edge of the frame with just a very small overlap with the masking tape, and I'm pressing it the whole way along, making sure the seal is really tight so that we don't get any paint bleed underneath the masking tape, and then fold the excess tape underneath. And I've done this the whole way round the frame on the outside and the whole way round the frame on the inside, as you can see. Okay, this is where the DIY gets a little bit fiddly. We're going to create the triangular design now. So we're going to double up pieces of masking tape. So overlap two pieces very slightly and then stick it in place on your frame where you want your triangle to go. And then using a pencil, draw out your triangle design. For these triangles, I'm not using a ruler. I kind of want it to have a slightly casual look about it, not too precise. Once you've drawn it, peel it off. Cut out the design using scissors and then reapply back onto the frame. The image of the Anthropologie frame on my phone so that I could reference the design, and I did this same technique the whole way around the frame for all the places where there's these triangles. So just work your way around. It is a bit fiddly, but this bit's really important to get the design, and also really important that you apply these triangles really well and that they're really stuck down, so when we paint we don't get any paint bleed under the masking tape. Now we're going to use exactly the same technique with a slightly larger piece of masking tape for the diamonds that sit in between these triangles. So you'll see these on the original Anthropologie frame. This time I am going to use a ruler. I'm going to dot the centre between the 2 points of the triangle, and then I'm going to join it up using my little wooden, it's not actually a ruler, it's a stirring paint tool, but it has a straight edge. So I'm going to use that to join up the lines and get myself a really neat diamond, peel it off, cut it using scissors, and then apply it back onto the frame. I'm going to repeat this for the opposite diamond as well, exactly the same. Draw it out, peel it off. Don't worry if your 2 pieces of masking tape come apart, you can stick them back together again, cut the shape out and stick it on. Then for the long sides, there's actually 2 diamonds on the design, so we're going to stick together 2 pieces of masking tape a little bit longer, but it's exactly the same technique. We're just going to draw out 2 diamonds this time. So I'm going to do that for both long sides. Of course, you can do any design you want. I'm obviously copying the original Anthropologie frame, but the masking tape allows you to do any kind of design that you can cut out. Before we get to painting, I'm going to cut out a small square and apply it into each corner. I did find this a little bit tricky to get each square exactly the same, so you could draw them out first to get them the same size, but I kind of like that slightly uneven look. It makes the frame look homemade and a little bit more rustic, and even the Anthropologie one is not 100% perfect, so don't worry too much. But yeah, 4 squares, 1 in each corner. I finished masking out my design, you can see it here, and I just went round and made sure that all the masking tape was pressed down firmly before I moved on to painting. So once again, I'm going to lay down some paper to protect my table before I start painting, and I've decided to go for the greeny blue version of the Anthropologie frame. So I'm going to be using an Annie Sloan chalk paint called Provence because I have a little small tub of it and I really like the colour. It's kind of a tealy turquoisey blue, and I'm going to use a sponge to apply it, and that's going to give a really nice mottled effect because we don't actually want a solid coat of colour. We want there to be gaps. So I'm going to use this little sponge which I just happen to have. I think it's actually a makeup sponge. You could cut a bit off a bathroom sponge or use some kitchen roll, anything you want. One of the first things I do is stir up my paint, make sure it's all mixed up properly, and then I also sponge off a lot of the excess off my sponge onto the paper, and that means I don't apply too much paint in one go because that's the last thing you want. So yeah, have a little bit of a test on your paper, get rid of any excess paint so you've got a nice amount, and then go at it on your frame nice and uneven. Leave lots of gaps where you can see the wood. You don't have to use chalk paint for this DIY. You could use a small tester pot of paint which you pick up at the DIY store, so that would work equally well, and you could buy a couple of colours. Because next we're actually going to use a second colour. It needs to be sort of tonally the same kind of colour, so I'm actually going to use an Annie Sloan colour again called Duck Egg, which is a slightly different greeny blue, and it's just going to give a little bit of depth to this marbled finish. That's kind of what I'm trying to create. I'm trying to create an uneven marbled finish. So the Duck Egg colour, I'm actually going to sponge into all of the gaps that I've left. To do the rose version of this Anthropologie frame, you would just pick yourself up some different shades of pink and red to be able to create this sort of tonal marble design. So very easy. You could do it in any colours you want, to be honest. The last colour I'm going to use is this brighter blue called Giverny. It's another Annie Sloan paint, and a little thin brush, and I'm going to use a little bit of water to water down the paint, and I'm going to add very small like vein type effects. You don't have to be too arty to do this. It is really random because remember, when you pull off the masking tape, you're not going to see the whole design. You're only going to see sections of it. So use the little brush and the water just to try and create some little veins, some little darker sections of this blue, and yeah, be creative and play around with it, and don't be afraid to just have fun. And when you're finished, you're going to have something that kind of resembles this. It kind of looks a bit weird at the moment, but leave it to dry, and then we get to the really exciting bit of peeling off all the masking tape to reveal the design. Once you've left your frame to dry properly, we're now going to start peeling off the masking tape. So do be careful when you do this, but this is the funnest bit and you get to see what you've created. And to be honest, I didn't even know really what mine was going to look like, so it was quite exciting. So yeah, work your way around, peel it off carefully. A little disclaimer. I did use a knife just to help me peel up the corners of the masking tape, but please, if you're going to do the same, please be careful with it, and please don't hold it by the blade like I am. I'm really not an advertisement for health and safety. You can also use the knife or the point of some scissors just to clean up any edges. If you've had any paint bleed, just use it to scrape off any excess and sharpen up those lines. I had to do it in a couple of places. So to seal in the frame colours, I'm actually going to use a wax. It's the Annie Sloan chalk paint wax, but you could also use a varnish or you could use a spray sealer, but it's good to seal in the paint just so it doesn't get scratched and so your design will last. So I'm just using a bit of kitchen roll and I'm going to rub the wax all over, leave it to dry thoroughly, and then actually apply a second coat of wax as well. You can buff up the wax to be shiny, but I've chosen to leave mine and leave it a little bit matte. And that's it, pop your glass back in, and I've actually inserted something that actually was an invite to an event, but I really loved the print and I thought it was very Anthropologie-esque and it really suited the colours of the frame. So I've cut that to size, popped it in there along with my glass and my backing, and yeah, I think it looks great. I'm really pleased with the marbling effect. I think it looks so similar to the Anthropologie one, and obviously it was a fraction of the price. My frame was $2.99 and I already had a lot of the material, so it really did cost me next to nothing. I hope you've enjoyed my Anthropologie frame DIY. I would love to know if you're going to give it a go, if you like it, and what other items you would like to see me recreate. Please do subscribe and give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and see you next time. Bye!